I wasn't born in Miami. I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I came to Miami to open the World Erotic Art Museum. I had already been turned down by many other locations. I knew very little about Miami other than that it was a vacation destination. And since many people come here on vacation, I thought that would be a good reason to come here. Other locations turned me down because, unfortunately, the American public thinks erotic art means pornography, and they were afraid I would bring something nasty and unsavory to their neighborhoods. So I was turned down by many landlords and politicians that didn't want me in their premises or in their areas. I was not knowledgeable about erotic art. It came upon me. My son asked me to find him some erotic pieces that he had heard you can find in the antique world, since I was an antiquer by hobby and passion. And I knew nothing about it. I came from an Orthodox Jewish home, and the idea of being exposed to erotic art was foreign to me. But I went to the marketplaces and went looking, and I was told I couldn't find anything. And eventually a dealer told me it's not out because people come to the markets with children, that you literally have to ask the dealers if they have erotic art. So I started doing that, and the dealers looked at me like I was crazy. They even made the motion as if I had my head on wrong or something, because this was a man's realm. They expected men to ask for erotic art, not a matronly-looking woman. So it was a new experience, but eventually, since I kept going back to the markets over and over, they saw I was serious. They knew I had financial means because I bought other things in the marketplace for myself. So eventually they started showing me their things. And it was curious in the beginning. It didn't matter what they showed me. Everything was $1,000, even if it was worthless, because they knew I wanted it. And in the beginning I bought everything I saw because I didn't know how much is out there. And I found 3 things for my son, and then I told him I had satisfied his request. Only now I still antiqued, and it was now a habit to go through the marketplace asking the dealers if they had erotic art. So I continued to do it, only now I started keeping the pieces. So eventually I wound up with a collection. And my neighbors and friends admired it and thought it was so unique, so I kept on buying. And then I realized it had become an obsession, and I was always looking for what else is out there. And I liked the art because it showed life. It showed life as people live it, as what is human, what is normal, what people do. And I sort of resented that it was hidden away, and that I thought it should be shown to the public, but it was a difficult thing for me to do because my husband, who was very conservative and was a German Jew, Auschwitz survivor, didn't like the idea. He thought it didn't set in with his reputation of being a staid banker. So I kept the collection in Florida away from his banks in New Jersey. And eventually I wound up with so many pieces that people started telling their friends, and they had bring them to my home. And the last thing they always said when they left is, "My goodness, this is so unusual, it should be in a museum." But I didn't have the capacity or means of putting it in a museum, and I couldn't because of my husband. And then one day, a dealer came to my home, an antique dealer, was brought by a friend and a neighbor, and he said, "You can't keep this to yourself. It's too unique, it's too unusual, it's too rare." So he said, "At least put it into a book." So I said, "Well, I don't have that experience to do that." So he found me a publisher, the Schuster Publishing Company, and they published 2 books on my collection. And then a local professor in one of the colleges that taught human sexuality saw the books, and he asked me if I would come lecture to his human sexuality classes about the contents of the book and my experience in acquiring those things. And he was very much impressed by how I presented myself in the lecture, and as a result he invited me back to every incoming class that he had. And then he told a professor on another campus about me, and then she followed the same thing of asking me to come into each of her classes. So now I was a collector, I was an author, and I was also a lecturer. But then in the background, I still kept collecting, and the collection literally became overwhelming for being in my home. I was afraid people either would fall over something and break it or get hurt, because not only did I fill the cabinets and the walls, wall to wall, I started leaning paintings against the chairs, putting small objects on the chairs, and there wasn't even a spare chair for someone to sit on. So then I came in contact with the people that had the Erotic Museum in France, and originally was going to partner with them and started looking for a location together in the United States. And we found a location, but we then fell apart because of terms of an agreement, and then I was left on my own to what to do. And I had so much, I decided I have to find a museum location on my own. And after many experiences of being turned down, I finally found the location in Miami Beach. And curiously, it was my son who started me collecting erotic art, who noticed the sign on the building I'm in and called me up and said, "Ma, I found another location for you. Come check it out." And that's how I wound up in Miami Beach. I had no experience in collecting art, in researching art, the history of art, the requirements or the points of interest of things that should be done in setting up a museum. It was really a virgin venture to try and do that on my own. But fortunately, it succeeded and worked out, and my museum has been open 9 years already.